Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and our continuing series on the MiSter FPGA DE10 Nano project. And if you didn't watch my video last week, there is a brand new Sega Saturn core build from Srg320. And when there's a new core build, that means we're going to go and test games that didn't used to work and see what is now working and see if any games that were old have improvements. And I will say a lot of games that didn't used to work are now working, and that is incredible. Before we get too far involved, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe. That notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. But right off the top, one that everyone keeps asking me to test over and over again, even though I never got it to boot, was Sega Ages Outrun. Now you do need to use the Rev A revision of this game. There are two online, but it is now working on MiSter FPGA under the Saturn core. Now I get that we already have Hotego's arcade outrun core, but the Sega Saturn version is no slouch, and it's one of those iconic Sega games that everyone wanted to know if it would run on the core, and the great part it is now working. I will say you're going to get absolutely no music out of it whatsoever. It does play mute, but all of the controls are as to be expected, and visually there's a couple little hitches in the graphics, but it's been so long since I played Outrun on the Saturn, I can't remember if that's actually on the Saturn hardware, or if it might be something that the core is doing, as it still is work in progress. If you have any thoughts on that, leave me a comment down below. But the great thing is, it is 100% working and you can play it today. I played it for probably like 5 or 6 minutes and I was able to get from start to finish after a couple playthroughs. So I will say, as far as compatibility concerns are, it works. Now moving on to a Capcom fighting game that never worked before, and a deeper cut for them is going to be Cyberbots. This is an awesome game. And again, we already have it on MiSter on Hotego CPS cores, but it is incredible on Saturn. It does have a couple extra features that the arcade version doesn't bring to the table. Again, it's going to be another one of those games that's going to play mute. You might hear a sound effect here and there. For the most part, you're going to get no music and you're going to get no sound effects. But everything else is working absolutely perfectly. I have played a ton of Cyberbots in my time, so I'm familiar with the look and feel of the game, and I cannot see anything whatsoever on the current core build that leads me to believe that there's any errors or bugs within the actual graphic side of things. All of what's VDP1 and VDP2 are doing is working here. You can see the nice parallax in the background, the separation of the layers. The game is fast, responsive, and the controls are exactly as I would expect. And that's the great thing, is this game never worked. From the first core preview that I did all the way to the new core came out in April, you could not play Cyberbots. There's a couple of Capcom fighting games like the X-Men series that would work, but this is one that people kept asking me to test every single time a new core came out, and every single time I tested it, it would freeze on loading. You can now play this game. It works perfectly fine. You're just going to have to hum to yourself and imagine what you think it sounds like, because the reality is, with no music, it's just kind of not as exciting of an experience, because the soundtrack is incredible. But all of that stuff will come in future cores, I am sure. But it is great to see Cyberbots running here, because I will say all of the sprites are huge on Saturn. It looks so good. This is one of those quintessential Saturn 2D games that everyone knows and loves. Now, another game that everyone always wants me to test, and I always try, and it never works, is Panzer Dragoon 2 Zui. And I will say, I tested it, I tried it, and as usual, it just didn't work whatsoever. I don't know, maybe it's just my luck, I'm not sure, but I still cannot get this game to load. So if you're trying to play it on your MiSter on the work in progress core and it doesn't work, you will know why. Now, one game that does work, and works probably better than anything else I played on the MiSter, is going to be Sexy Proteus. All of the sound is perfect, all of the visuals are perfect, all of the controls are responsive. I played this game until I had to switch to a different capture, but my expectation would be that you could play this game from start to finish, and I absolutely love the intro scene here. It is just so goofy and it's so weird, and the entire game is exactly that. It is weird from start to finish, but in such a fun way. And of course, it is called Sexy Proteus for a reason. But I will say that this game is so amazing to have running on a MiSter, because I actually don't own a physical copy of this game. It's got a spectacular soundtrack and everything sounds perfect here. So go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and I'll come back and show you more games that just work. If there's any issue in the audio whatsoever, I can't hear it, but leave me a comment down below and tell me if that sounds good to you. But I will say I absolutely love this game, even I always forget to not touch the ground. That always trips me up and I always end up dying. But it's got such a great sense of humor, it's got such great 2D visuals, all of the colorful, bright, cheery sprites, everything just looks amazing, and it is playing exactly as you would expect on MiSter. And the interesting thing is, some of the games that have worked the best for me have been Konami shmups. I don't understand why that is, but clearly as developers they utilize certain calls from VDP 1 and 2, and they must have been consistent across all of the games, because now that we have a new game working and loading, it is performing exactly as the other Konami shmups I've featured on the channel so far, which is to say it is just bang up perfect in my opinion. Now a game that I always want to play, even though again it is available on the CPS2 cores, is Street Fighter 03, also known as Alpha 3 in the US. And I cannot get this to boot whatsoever. I get into the game, I get into this FMV cutscene that shows Capcom, and even if you skip it, it doesn't matter, it always goes to freeze for me. But here's the interesting thing about the current core, it is very organic. This capture was sent to me by Andy D over on the MiSter Discords, and I don't care what people say about him, I think he's alright. But all jokes aside, he does get it to run on his system, and specs wise we really don't have anything different. And that's the interesting thing. I've got some games running on my MiSter that other people can't get to run, and we have the exact same RAM, the exact same SD cards, everything is identical. And sometimes that just happens because it is still a real work in progress. But you can see here Street Fighter 03 is running on some people's MiSters and maybe it'll work on yours. A game that I really want to show everybody because it does feature the 4MB RAM cartridge is Final Fight Revenge. It is cheesy garbage, but I absolutely love it, and it only worked on Andy D's system again. I tried this 3 or 4 times, I had no luck with it whatsoever, but other people were able to get it to work. So thanks to Andy D for sending in these 2 captures for this video. I've known him and chatted with him for a while now, and I do appreciate it because I'm able to show you guys what is working even if I can't make it happen. And I'm not here to tell you that Final Fight Revenge is some revelation and a hidden gem that you haven't played before. I'm here to tell you it's not as bad as you've heard. It is not a great game. It's probably on par with the original Street Fighter EX, which is to say it's a company that's having growing pains trying to figure out how to transition something into 3D. Because obviously Final Fight wasn't a 3D fighting game, it was a 2D beat 'em up game, and a lot of times in this generation things are just kind of rough on translation. Now a game that does seem to be working better on the current core, and one that I tested probably back in 2022, is the original Wipeout. And I remember this game having a lot of graphical corruption and just having some hitching in the controls and the frame rate. Obviously we're not dealing with 60 frames a second here because that's not how it ever ran on the original Saturn, but it seems to be working a lot better to my memory and to my eye than it did when I originally tested it. And you'll have to forgive me bumping into the wall. I've never been able to understand exactly how Wipeout works. I mean, I know the controls, what I'm supposed to be doing. I've just never ever gotten good at it. So if you see me bouncing around, it's not the core, it's just me sucking at the game. And that's the fun thing, you don't have to be good at every single game, and I know some people are absolute monsters at Wipeout and are going to just love playing it on the Saturn core, but you can 100% check it out today. The audio is a little bit weird, and just like in Mario Kart, we've got a buddy that's going to save us from that impending pit of doom. But it's so much fun to go back and test some of the things that did work before, but didn't work too well. That way we can see the progression in the core. Now I am sure that there is some regression as well. Some games that used to work probably don't. I haven't hit any of those yet, but I haven't been testing too many of them. But I will go back through some of the deep cuts and the greatest hits of the Saturn library that did work on previous cores and check them out and let you know if anything does have a regression. But as far as the original Wipeout's concerned, looks great, controls great, plays great. Obviously no sound, can't comment on that yet, but it is 100% working and functioning much better than the last time I tested it back in 2022. Now one game that is working that I do not understand whatsoever, and all of you guys wanted to see it, I'm sure you thought it would be funny, and it is Congo. Now honestly, Congo isn't as bad of a game as the internet would tell you, and the FMVs do work without any sort of freezing, and that is always a good thing. Congo is a first-person shooter on the Sega Saturn, and honestly, it's not the worst. It doesn't really make much sense, and if you ever remember Congo, there were not giant spiders to my memory, and all the other weird things in the game. It is not the most accomplished game in the world, but it's a great game to test because the sound is working as I would expect it to, the graphics are working as I would expect them to, the controls are as fluid as Congo could possibly pull off, and the mix of 2D sprite enemies and 3D polygons work really well, so VDP 1 and 2 and all of those effects are strung together in the current core. And I will say surprisingly, or maybe not so, because who knows, just because Congo's bad doesn't mean it should perform bad, the audio is really good in Congo, so listen for 30 seconds this time and I'll come back and show you some more games. Hey, it just sounds like it should, and I don't remember a giant plank of wood trying to beat you up in the movie Congo, but here it 100% is. Now into a smaller game that I remember from back in the day is Mass Destruction. And this is one that I had tested on previous cores and I'd never gotten it to launch, but on the current April build of the MiSter Saturn core, it does just work, and it is like a really fun game. It's sort of like an isometric tank battle game, and those palm trees there look like they're straight ripped out of a Sonic 3D game that never existed for the Saturn. It's not a deep cut hidden gem, it is just a fun B tier game, but all of the controls are perfect so long as you like tank controls. It's Resident Evil style, except this time it makes sense because at least we do have a tank, but it just works and it is a fun game just to play around with. I love the art style, I love running over soldiers in the tanks. It just has that small B tier experience that Saturn and even PlayStation 1 was known for, and it was one of those games that didn't work on the previous core. So that is a ton of fun to have more games that are working, and it seems like the library may be expanded by like 5% or so currently with my testing of games that didn't used to work and now do, and hopefully the next time we get a core update it's going to bring some of those other games that I still can't get to run or other people can't get to run into the working category. Now on the games that I hadn't tested yet is Gusan Oyoyo. I do not know if I'm pronouncing that right, it is very difficult, but this is a game that I've always played around on Saturn. I do own a copy, and it is such a small little tiny experience of a game, but it is so addictively fun. The entire point of this game is you just need to build a land bridge for your character to get to the exit. Now if you do test this game, I'm going to give you a heads up though, turn your volume way down. Some of the sound effects are so loud randomly that it's going to 100% clip your volume and maybe even blow your speakers, or if you're wearing headphones you're going to jump out of your seat. But you'll see here we built our little buddy a bridge, and as we move on, you just get these amazing little goofy cutscenes. This is what I love about the Sega Saturn and what I hope people take away from the MiSter Saturn core. Is for every top 10 of all time game list for the Sega Saturn you see, there's 100 games that are a ton of fun to play that you've probably never heard of before, and that's what is so great about something like this. It's going to really allow more people to enjoy the Sega Saturn and get more of an experience out of it. So if you are testing the Sega Saturn core on your own end, just start loading up games you've never heard of before, because I assure you, you're going to hit at least one thing that you really like. But on to the best game I tried in this testing period. Obviously it's going to be Sexy Proteus. The sound is perfect, the control is perfect, all of the graphics work exactly as you would expect, and it just so happens to be an absolutely spectacular horizontal shmup. And it's so much fun that I can tell you guys one of the best games I tested this round is also just one of the best shmups on the Saturn in my opinion. It doesn't always line up that way, but this time we got lucky, and that's what I can tell you. If you want to play one game off this current core from this video, it's going to be Sexy Proteus. But that is what I've tested on the current batch of tests. If I've missed something or you want to see something, leave me a comment down below and tell me what you want to see me test next. Because now that we have a new core, I'm going to continue testing games I haven't tried before and going back and trying some of the games I've never gotten to boot. So hopefully we'll find even more working games as we go on. Short of that, I will be back next Thursday with another MiSter video, and I'll have videos throughout the week as well. But it's so exciting to have this new core build because we've been working on the December core for so long. Now we got the April one. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.